My name is David Weathersby. My film is entitled Got the Love. I am the producer and director of the film. It's a short documentary on modern soul in the city of Chicago.
You gotta unpack that. Okay. Modern soul. What does that mean?
Okay, well, I'll back up into the full story. It's my day job is I'm a videographer. I've been a videographer for about a decade now, for about 10 years. And I worked with a number of musicians. That was my main clientele, was musicians. And over the years, I met a lot of incredible people, a lot of dynamic people, heard a lot of really incredible stories. And so I started going through my archives, my hard drives and everything, and just started putting something together from all the extra footage I collected, and then added a few interviews and just turned it into a research project on what soul is now post the neo soul boom. You know, people who, you know, the film is basically three components. It's like where we are, where we're going, and what happened. And so that's where the film Got the Love came from.
Got you. Okay. Is that how you typically make your documentaries, from found footage of other projects, or do you pick specific projects?
No, no. I usually do a lot of, like, all the other projects that I'm working on, projects I've done. I do a lot of pre-production work, a lot of prepping, and this one was actually difficult for me because I had to go and kind of retroactively find a story, and I wanted to make sure that the story was there, that I wasn't forcing it. So I had to kind of go through the footage and see what story I felt it was already telling, and then add in interviews that kind of pulled that out, that really emphasized that.
Artistically, that's a pretty interesting project, process to go from what you have and try to find the story, as opposed to identifying the story and trying to, find the corresponding footage. What was that process like? I mean, I know you said it was difficult, but any other reflections on it?
It was difficult, but it was also fascinating. I have a fascination with history and culture from, throughout the city, any kind of subset of people who do something, who become passionate something, I'm naturally drawn to that. So I kind of just went through my archives looking at that. That's what it was. I was just kind of looking through it, just kind of remembering a shoot I did from years ago. And I actually saw the story in that. So it was difficult making sure that everything coincides, your typical trying to find a flow, find, your three act, framework of it. But it was also intriguing to find out that something that happened 3 years ago connected to something I had shot 6 months ago. And so that was the most difficult part, but it was also the most exhilarating part, is just going through all that footage, hard drive after hard drive, and finding that connective story.
Outside of finding the soul and working with musicians, what other documentaries do you work on?
Most of my documentaries are within the arts and culture, topic. This all stemmed from, I've actually started an organization. My organization has helped filmmakers kind of document their culture, document through documentaries. And so most of the things I have things on visual arts, a couple of different musical genres, political subsets of the city. A lot of my stuff is really centered around the people of Chicago, the different cultures that do not get documented. They don't get the notoriety because there's no, how do I say this, provocative negativity to them. And so their story, no matter how important, may get overlooked because and I feel like that story is just as important as anything else in the city. So I do what I can to just if I let two people know, that's the best I can do. And it's a thank you for these people, for them letting me come in and talk to them and learn from them and everything. So this the least I can do.
Why Chicago?
I feel like Chicago is a fascinating city. I feel like it encompasses so much of what the entire country feels, but it doesn't have a air about it. There's that blue collar element that keeps things grounded. So you have a lot of diversity, but it's still grounded with a kind of a blue collar, working class, Midwest kind of sensibility that I find intriguing and I find fascinating.
Yeah, yeah. And has any of your documentaries taken you outside of Chicago, or have they all been kind of focused here?
Not yet. Got the Love is I've been a videographer for like I said for like almost 10 years now, but this is actually my first project of me producing on my own. I've done stuff for people for years, basically like a little small like doc for clients and everything, but this is actually my first step out and producing on my own. And I wanted to really, give back to, so they gave me a lot.
What was that like, producing?
It was very different. I mean, a lot of stuff was similar because a lot of times when I look back in that, if I'm honest, like I was producing for clients and didn't kind of really put a name on it. But when it's all on you, it's different. It's different. You have to put in effort. You have to wear a lot of different hats. One hat needs to check another hat. And so it's different, but it's fascinating, and I think it's healthy because it teaches you a lot of different facets that you may not want to learn on your own, but you're kind of forced to. And then I'm grateful that I got to learn those.
I think Chicago is going to be grateful because you stepped out on a limb, and produced this film, and now it's going to be seen by hundreds and thousands of people at the Black Harvest Film Festival. As a filmmaker, what's that like to have a film selected for a film festival? I don't know if you've had one before, but for this one, what's the experience like?
It's an overwhelming honor because it's being Black Harvest, being what Black Harvest means to the city. It's really touching to be honored by this organization, by this film festival, their history, what other great films have come through the festival. It's humbling. It really is. It really is, especially for a project that I was scared to even show. I took extra time. I don't know how many versions of the film I just deleted. so for it to finally, when you have enough courage to just put it out there for accepted, it's humbling.
Great. Are there any documentary filmmakers that inspire you? Or filmmakers in general?
Filmmakers in general? I guess, documentary, Werner Herzog is a major inspiration. Just his style, his kind of out of the box way of doing it, kind of made me feel a little bit more confident because I was doing a lot of things that were not in the rule books as far as documentary. So people like that, and beyond that, I guess my biggest influence would just be somebody like a Gordon Parks. Not so much, he wasn't, not much documentary, but just him as a person, as a filmmaker. Or just all the things that he did and how he had kind of a Renaissance way of, he dabbled in everything. And to get to this project, I dabbled in a lot of stuff with Dove. So even though it wasn't a direct, like I said, he wasn't a documentary film, but just his presence, his story, I think was probably the biggest influence was Gordon Parks.
Back to your film. Mm-hmm. What do you hope your audience, or the people who are going to view this film, what do you hope they take from it?
Appreciation. I think the film really showed, it highlights a lot of, because I interviewed a lot of musicians. It was like 20 plus musicians in Chicago, and they were all, incredible. They all had their own set of audiences. And if anything I could do is people just start to appreciate basically the musician next door. Sometimes we feel like we need fame to be validated. We need a large or national entity to say something to recognize someone before we recognize it. And so we don't need to do that. We can recognize our talent right here. You don't need to be, it doesn't need to be approved. And if anything, if anybody could take anything from this, would be just appreciate, check them out, interest and appreciation.